Good evening and thanks for joining us on the Week in Review. I'm Nick Blumberg. Juliana Stratton emerges victorious after a bruising Democratic primary for Senate.
Tonight we showed what's possible when you listen to the people and give the people what they want. You got it.
After weeks of neck-and-neck polls, unofficial results show Stratton with a commanding 7-point victory.
What he is proposing to do is bad for the people of our state.
Illinois is less affordable because of J.B. Pritzker.
It's 2022 all over again, as Governor J.B. Pritzker is set to face a challenge from Republican gubernatorial candidate Darren Bailey.
If I got to veto something to make sure that black and brown women are protected, then veto it is.
Mayor Brandon Johnson slams an aldermanic effort to reverse course on phasing out tipped minimum wage. Meantime, dueling accusations after the mayor swiftly fires his deputy mayor for public safety. And the Chicago Housing Authority Board bucks the mayor and appoints a CEO of its own choosing. And now to our Week in Review panel. Joining us are Patrick Fingston of the Illinois Political Newsletter, Jeff Buchholz of WBBM News Radio, Rufus Williams of WVON, and Shruti Singh of Bloomberg News. Thank you all for being here. Let's get right to it. Three things happened this week, a little bit busy. Jeff, Raja Krishnamurthy had a consistent lead in the polls. He was also up with ads very early, and there were plenty of undecideds. In the end, did it sort of feel like Stratton ate away at his lead pretty quickly?
I think it was more gradual. It was sort of the tale of the tortoise and the hare writ across the Democratic political landscape, because indeed Raja was leading in a lot of the polls until probably 6 weeks out, I think, and then you started to see the impact of finally Juliana Stratton's campaign ads getting on the air, and also the ads from the Illinois Future PAC controlled by Governor J.B. Pritzker, who has been her political champion through this whole cycle. And in the end, as you point out in the opening piece, as of right now, a 7-point lead, a pretty substantial lead over a really strong field, including, not only Raja, but Robin Kelly, the congresswoman from the South Side and the South Suburbs.
Well, let's call this what it is. This is one of the most incredible comebacks we've seen in Illinois politics in some years. I mean, she was left for dead around the new year politically. Krishnamurthy had all the name ID, had dominated TV since July, completely unchecked. Pritzker's dark money hadn't come in yet. Nobody knew what she was doing. And then all of a sudden they just hit. And somebody texted me Tuesday night, said, never doubt Team Pritzker.
Yeah, it seemed, thinking about the LA Marathon, when the American came from behind and caught him right at the finish line. Yeah. He collapsed, and 0.8 seconds was the winner. What it looked like through all of this, and there was so much conversation around this race, so much money that was spent. Certainly, Raja was putting out ads a year ago, so everybody knew who Raja was. We know how it carries in the city. We don't know how it carries downstate. And Juliana ultimately, the lieutenant governor, ultimately, because she's there and the governor has such sway, it made a difference. His impact made a lot of a difference.
And I think this race has been watched nationally as well. I mean, this is a race that is for the U.S. Senate, and it's also a race that people were sort of talking about in terms of what it means for Governor Pritzker. Right. Is he going to run in 2028? And what would happen to his political capital whether she won or lost? Now she won. We're going to see how that's going to play out for him if he decides to run. And we were just talking, too, he had another win in the form of Margaret Croak, the candidate for Illinois Comptroller that he backed, going against outgoing Comptroller Susana Mendoza's endorsement there. So another win that he notched. The Pritzker takeover of the state Democratic Party is pretty much complete at this point. And there's been a lot of wrestling over the years between he and Senator Durbin. And there have been some ruffled feathers in the last few months between he and Comptroller Mendoza and the African-American community, trying to put his thumb on the scale to get Juliana Stratton across the line. I would assume that hurt feelings get mended after an election, but the money is part of this, and it's part of this narrative, and people are going to keep talking about it for a long time.
I do want to jump back for a second to the Senate race, though, because this was really big, and there was a thought that there would be a split of the vote between Robin Kelly and Juliana Stratton. And so it only split some. Robin Kelly is very well respected, very well regarded in Washington, D.C. But in the end, Juliana Stratton comes through, and now that she will be only the 6th black woman to be in the Senate should she be successful in the fall. And, Democrats in Illinois, there's not any real reason to believe she won't be, although there's still a race to run. It's really historic when you look at how this thing turns out.
Governor Pritzker was on the West Side on Thursday talking about film and television production in the state of Illinois, and I asked him if the results of Tuesday's election made him a kingmaker in the state of Illinois, and he said, "Did you use the word king or cake?" Which was actually a hilarious line from him on the fly. He's clearly getting ready. He's clearly getting to be in 2028 form.
Well, and Rufus, just to jump back to that one, but Robin Kelly herself, made the comment at a certain point, I believe, that a lot of folks were concerned about having two, female African-American candidates, and she essentially said, you wouldn't say this if it were two black men, if it were two white women. Has this helped to perhaps put that to bed?
I certainly hope so, because it's always been the case. And anytime you see two black people in the race, that's the story that comes.
Right.
We are certainly, black people are a voting bloc, but we're not a monolith, and so it goes in so many different ways, and hopefully it has, in fact, put that to bed. It would have been different if Raja had won. He didn't, and so I think this changes the narrative.
And that split never really amounted to much in the end, because she dominated, Stratton dominated the city of Chicago so much that really what Kelly did didn't matter in the end. There was a point Tuesday night where Stratton was leading by 71,000 votes in the city and leading statewide by 69,000 votes. So that domination was the key.
And one of the words that I heard consistently on Tuesday and sort of before and after is the word fight and fighter. And Governor Pritzker has been saying that she has been someone who has fought for the people of Illinois, and that's the type of person we want to send to Washington, D.C. from the state of Illinois. So that theme seems to be resonating. Either they're trying to make it resonate or it's coming up naturally by itself. But the theme of fighting in Washington, D.C. for what the people of Illinois want, I keep hearing that over and over again.
Yeah, and a pretty saucy commercial about what's happening in Washington as well.
Oh, that's right.
Which shall not be repeated.
Now, one of the things, though, that we really have to recognize is the impact of Citizens United.
Sure.
And all of the money that comes into the race, it becomes more of who you're aligned with, who is putting money, who has money, that is impacting the outcome of these races. And I wonder how much that had to do with the turnout, because the turnout was truly abysmal for this race, and it's such an important race when we think about trying to get guardrails around what's happening in Washington,
But the money didn't fully get what they wanted.
Certainly not for Christian Murphy,
So, and in other races too, right? I mean, it was really a mixed bag, because you saw a flood of money coming in from different interests. There was this whole thing about, the Pritzker dollars versus the crypto dollars, and, you had so many different alliances coming in, but the big money didn't exactly get everything they wanted.
Well, there was big money everywhere. I don't think anybody without money won. Everybody who had money won. It was just a matter of whose money it was.
Well, in particular, the AIPAC lobby and its affiliated its affiliated groups, Elect Chicago Women, which apparently is a division of AIPAC, threw a lot of money at this race. And particularly you saw that in the 9th District up on the north side and the North Shore, where Laura Fine, the state senator who was the beneficiary of AIPAC money and Oppo money against her opponent in that race, the eventual winner of the primary, Dan Biss, and Kat Abu-Ghazaleh, the social media influencer, Laura Fine wound up third in that race.
And AIPAC then came out and took credit for helping to block Abu-Ghazaleh, but coming in as a second place finish, that's a little bit hard to buy.
And becoming one of the issues in the race is not something a super PAC wants to do.
Right.
And AIPAC became an issue in this race, which says a lot about where the Democratic Party is, particularly in a district with really well-known Jewish enclaves in Skokie and in Rogers Park.
Yeah.
And the places where AIPAC spent a ton of money that they didn't become the story, which were the 7th, where LaShawn Ford won, and the 8th, where Melissa Bean won. The 2nd as well, Donna Miller. They spent a ton on Donna Miller.
Yeah, that's true.
That they weren't the issue in the race and ended up doing pretty well.
Yeah, and to the 7th district, the folks at Fair Shake, the crypto super PAC, spent a ton of money against LaShawn Ford.
Right.
And that didn't work.
Yeah.
I also want to point out that this particular Senate race has other ripple effects. I mean, you had now 2 members of the House that have left their positions because
Right.
they were running for this. You have a member of, the reason this whole race became a big deal is because Senator Durbin decided to leave his seat after 30 years. I mean, you've had so much turnover and new people coming into these positions. I think that it just really begs questions now about what they're going to do, what they're going to be really positioning themselves for leading up to November. So this race just had so many themes that hit in politics, whether it's money, whether it's internal fighting within parties, and I just feel like coming up into November, we're going to have more questions than answers at this point.
This club had everything.
Yeah. Well, and of course, it was congressional musical chairs, but there was a gubernatorial primary as well on the GOP side, set for a rematch between Governor Pritzker and former state lawmaker Darren Bailey. Patrick, Bailey's been striking a different tone this time, somewhat trying to make amends, particularly with Chicagoans. Do you think this approach might prove more effective for him?
Well, I mean, he certainly softened his tone, right? Whether it's being humbled by the whooping that he took in 2022, or certainly the tragedy that he and his family faced last fall when his son and daughter-in-law and two of their grandkids were killed in a helicopter crash. He admits openly that changed him. That changes how he sees the world, how he talks to people, how he approached this race. But when you dig deep into it, the policy hasn't changed, right? He's still a Southern Illinois conservative.
Right.
And you've somehow got to convince suburban voters who have abandoned the Republican Party en masse since 2016 that this guy with the Southern drawl is going to be your change here. Even with the frustration out there for Governor Pritzker, and while his approval rating has ticked back up above 50%, post-ICE, it was below 50% before that. So he's not swimming in popularity. But if Darren Bailey can't somehow convince suburbanites who said, sorry, the Republican Party is dead to me, there's no path forward for him.
And they're de-emphasizing a lot of the social issues that Darren Bailey talked about 4 years ago.
Right.
We talked to Darren Bailey and Aaron Del Mar a few weeks ago when they were out in Oswego, and they've really been trying to focus on the kind of bread and butter issues that they believe will make a difference in this race, affordability, and that sort of thing. But the number to look at is 42. That's the percentage of the vote Darren Bailey got in 2022. Governor Pritzker is going to want to make sure that he gets less than 42 as he looks to 2028.
To make sure that there's a nice sign of strength there.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's smart for Bailey to focus on those, they're saying the 80-20 issues, right? They're saying the economics, the cost of living, the public safety, education, those sort of things. And you're going to see the governor, every sentence he puts out between now and November is going to be abortion, 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 right? He's going to make Darren Bailey look like a far-right crazy man. And Bailey's even tried to soften his stance on abortion when he came out against a personhood bill sponsored by a conservative state senator from downstate that also at the same time had a bring back the death penalty bill. So the messaging was right there that, hey, Republicans want to, give you the death penalty for having an abortion, and Bailey came out against it. That's a smart political move that 2022 Darren Bailey never gets near. So he's grown. I don't know that he's grown enough to win.
And it's a challenge of what's believable. And it's good that he'll focus on the suburban counties because it's not going to happen in the city. I think so often.
You think?
So often when we start to look at what's happening, and I don't know how he will distance himself from all else that is considered Republican in this moment, which is not good, particularly for those of us in the city.
Yeah. Well, a lot of interesting local races as well. Pat Hines unseating incumbent Cook County Assessor Fritz Kagi. Shruti, do you think this is maybe down to folks upset about big property tax hikes? Always something that is on voters' minds.
I think property taxes are on people's minds for various reasons. One is the increases that they've seen in the last year in the last assessment. Also, the questions about the delays have also been on people's minds because a lot of the taxing bodies, the school districts and other libraries and things like that, they haven't gotten their money fully on time, and that's caused ripple effects for a variety of different things. So I think it's the increases, it's the how does the city, the county, and everybody divvy up what's being charged, and then is it going to be on time? So I mean, I think there's a variety of issues, and the county taxes are not one person, right? They're this formula of the assessor, and then you've got somebody who sets the rate, somebody who sets the levy, and there's just a mix of different people's, input into that system. And so, I don't know if you can ever really blame one person, but it's definitely on something that's on people's minds.
Yeah, you can't, but people somehow do.
People do it anyway.
And it seems that property taxes are complicated. And when people don't like it, then the answer seems to be, let's change. I talked to both Fritz Cahey and Patrick Hines throughout, and I didn't get a good sense that we're going to see anything different going forward. In fact, I don't expect to see anything different as it relates to taxes. And when asked directly, Pat Hines told me we see some changes in 3 years, which means by the time we see them, we won't even remember.
We won't remember that exactly.
But we'll be still mad about our property taxes.
But let's put this in context. A lot of these property taxes have nothing to do with the assessor's office. They have nothing to do with anything other than a lot of them go to existing liabilities, existing debt. Pensions are a huge factor.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, almost 80% of the city of Chicago's property taxes still go into their pensions. So I don't know if any one person coming into office every 4 years can change that long-term liability.
Well, the real estate bubble that we're in is part of the reason Fritz Cahey took a loss here, because the values of homes have gone up, which have raised the equalized assessed value, which has made him have to raise that number, at least according to that formula. So people in my suburb saw 20% higher property tax bills, and they said, to heck with that, we want somebody else. So he was partly a victim of the environment, but also, he had some stumbles too, like the $180 million potential property tax for the Bears because of how they assessed the Arlington Heights site. Right, there were some stumbles there that he could have either explained better or done the numbers better with.
Yeah, but it is always tough because there is often one person who wears the jacket for these things.
There's somebody who gets the blame, and within all those things, it is a complicated situation, and property values did increase, but then there's still the equalizer. There's the levy, and however that levy is coming, whether it's for pensions, whether it's because the schools need more, or whatever these things are.
Your local school district isn't lowering their levy even if property values are going up.
Right, and that was the dichotomy between personal taxes and commercial taxes, and that's what really harmed a lot of people, certainly in the black and brown communities in Chicago, where their taxes went up astronomically to what they had been before.
Right, because property in the loop is not as valuable as it was because
nobody's there.
Right, exactly.
Well, we could do elections until about 10 o'clock
tonight, I think. Something else
but,
you know,
a couple other things happened. Jeff, some surprising news out of City Hall yesterday. Deputy Mayor Gary Gatewood unceremoniously let go. What do we know about why?
Yeah, this was interesting. Gary Gatewood, the Deputy Mayor for Community Safety, has been in many ways Mayor Johnson's point person on his whole initiative to bring down crime by addressing the root causes of crime. This is something the mayor has talked about pretty much since he got into office, and Gary Gatewood has been there virtually from the beginning. And as the city has seen numbers showing a decrease in violent crime, Gary Gatewood's efforts have very much been front and center, and the mayor has appeared with him and has talked about those efforts and alliances with community violence intervention specialists and that kind of thing. And then Thursday afternoon happened, and he's out. Mr. Gatewood has been on a number of media outlets talking about how he was dismissed because he was trying to hold people inside the administration accountable. The Johnson administration is notoriously reluctant. Well, reluctant to talk about personnel issues in public. But a spokesperson for the mayor's office told me this morning that that was not why he was let go. A first deputy mayor who came over from the Pritzker administration back in May, named Jason Sanford, is going to take the position on an interim basis. I asked if we should get used to seeing Mr. Sanford in that role. I was told no, that there will be a permanent appointment coming up probably next month. But other than that, the mayor's office isn't really saying much other than they're committed to continuing to shoring up alliances with CVI groups and others to make sure that the mayor's initiatives on crime continue to move forward.
All right, another personnel announcement this week. Chicago Housing Authority been without a permanent leader for nearly a year and a half. The mayor had hoped to have former Alderman Walter Burnett take over, but Rufus, the board instead chose the head of Washington, D.C.'s Housing Authority. Were you surprised to see them go against Johnson's wishes here?
Not anymore. That seems to be a commonplace thing now, however that goes. But the person that they brought in did have experience in New Orleans and D.C. and was steeped in that. So the board, there's still controversy. The board members, enough members voted that he should, that they should bring him on. But as I understand it, the mayor's office is also looking to see if the resolution that brought him forward is okay. So it's done, but it's not done because there's still some legalities that they're looking at. But yeah, it was a surprise because the mayor had pushed for Alderman Burnett. Alderman Burnett had stated very obviously that he wanted the job. So this one caught a lot of people by surprise.
Yeah, quit city council so that he could take this job at CHA, and of course it gave the mayor the opportunity to install his son, Red Burnett, into that aldermanic spot on the west side. But yeah, now Walter Burnett is left waiting in the wings as the mayor and his team look at irregularities with that resolution.
And there's other administration positions also. I mean, the CFO recently left as well. They have an acting person in there in that position. CTA also looks like it's permanent, but I don't know.
It's been more than a year at this point.
So I think there's a number of positions across administration that are interim or acting or whatever you want to call it, but not the permanent person necessarily.
Yeah, Susan Capello, the head of Animal Care and Control, finally confirmed by City Council. She had been the acting head of the city's animal shelter for 3 years.
That is quite the trial period.
Right?
Sometimes you got to be sure when you're sure.
Yeah, right.
And even then,
don't
some
rush
people
things.
said they weren't
Still
sure.
not sure.
Right, so yeah, it still took quite a bit of pushback.
And there's also CPS, who has an interim leader, and that has been kind of interesting.
Another candidate just took themselves out of the running.
For the lady from New York took herself out of the running, so now you have the interim and the person from Baton Rouge, which is a somewhat smaller system than Chicago, being considered. So we'll see how that comes out. As well, members of the board had suggested that they should not put anyone permanently in the place until the fully seated 21-member board is now elected, which is to happen later this year and then be installed next year. So there's a lot of interim, empty, moving seats.
And I should just point out, related to CPS, we're now sitting here in March, and the CPS fiscal year is different than the Chicago fiscal year. So Chicago is January to end of December, and CPS is mid-year. School lets out, and they're getting going with that budget, so that's not that far away.
Yeah, well, you mentioned CTA. CTA filing suit against the federal government just this afternoon. Tell us about that. So
the Department of Transportation in about October or so started doing a review of practices for contractors and who is being hired. There's a long-standing practice in the federal government, and certainly here in Chicago, of using different ways of including race or gender-based preferences. Now, the Trump administration recently, around October, has said that is not supposed to be, that's not a policy that's supposed to be used going forward. There's a few different transit agencies, actually just like 2 really major ones that have been impacted by the federal freeze that the Trump administration has put into place. One is in New York and one is in Chicago. New York filed a lawsuit earlier this week related to the freeze, saying that that should be unpaused, and then Chicago filed the suit today. And it's several $billion, in terms of what could be going into the red and purple line. These are not questions about how long is this freeze going to go on? It's already been a few months. If it continues to go on, is work going to stop? Well,
and of course, the Biden administration in the final days of its tenure, they were rushing to get this red line extension agreement inked, to get, they have a full funding agreement executed. So a lot of folks have said, this is not a legal move by the Trump administration. There's a contract in place. It's interesting, the red and purple modernization had the same thing in the last days of the Obama administration, and they didn't, play funny with the money there. This time it seems like they're taking a more aggressive approach, trying to claw back those funds.
I mean, we've seen so many differences in the Trump administration in the second term compared to the first term, right? But what is happening right now is that you have these pauses, freezes, whatever you want to call it, and then it goes into the courts. Right. And so we've seen a variety of different maneuvers from the state and local governments as well as the federal government, and they kind of wind themselves through the courts, and then you don't actually know which way it's going to go, because sometimes it's like, oh, this court said move ahead. Now the next court says don't move ahead. So it's a question mark, and it is a challenge for state and local governments, because some of these these projects are years long, right? And they have to plan year after year. Now they can't necessarily do that.
Well, if there's one thing you can be sure of, the fights between local and state government and the federal government will not be stopping anytime soon.
Indeed. It might be a question mark for CTA, but I think the four of you are an exclamation mark. You're all great, but unfortunately we're out of time. So our thanks to Patrick Fingston, Jeff Buchholz, Rufus Williams, and Shruti Singh. And we're back to wrap things up right after this.
Tonight's presentation of Week in Review is made possible in part by Ann and Rich Carr, BNSF Railway, and Francine and Dr. Anthony Brown. Chicago Tonight is made possible in part by the Alexandra and John Nichols family, the Polk Brothers Foundation. Additional support is provided by
And that's our show for this Friday night. Be sure to sign up for our free email newsletter, The Daily Chicagoan. That's at WTTW.com/newsletter. Now for all of us here at the Week in Review, I'm Nick Blumberg. Thank you for watching. Stay healthy, stay safe, and stay informed. Have a great weekend. All right, Patrick, ILL.
I took time out of a Friday during the NCAA tournament for this. I deserve some credit. Illinois to the Final Four. I just want you to hear it here first.
You deserve a lot of credit. I'm sure there were people in North Carolina that thought they were going there too.
I'm not so sad. I'm not so sad
It was
for them.
not a good day for them.
No.
Almost a bad day for Kentucky today. They had a miracle just to get to overtime.
Let me tell you, I'll admit on my bracket, Duke is #1.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, a Chicago personal injury and wrongful death firm with more than 40 years of experience in medical malpractice.